Yo, what is up everyone? This is the Twice Over Film Club and I'm your host Faraz. Today is our discussion episode on Denis Villeneuve's 2021 Dune. Hopefully you've seen the film by now. It is in theaters and streaming on HBO Max. Because this episode obviously has spoilers. Make sure you're following us at the Twice Over on all the socials and subscribe to the podcast wherever you listen. Also, if you got the time, leave us a review. We'd appreciate it. Alright, let's get into the discussion. Yeah, anyway, let's talk about it, okay? I want to start with the aesthetics, actually.
Should we not start with the hardest category, which is the narrative?
I want to talk about what I really liked about the aesthetics, because aesthetics usually gets left out when we get into the narrative, and we just like...
Okay, we forget to come back.
We just forget about it.
All right.
I thought the aesthetics were visually great. I thought the sound was good.
The sound design was excellent.
The sound mixing was great, something that Christopher Nolan can learn from. Because there is a lot of loud noises, there's quiet noises, there's loud music, there's like sound effects, there's
it's very dynamic, right?
Yes, but yet you can understand and hear everything.
Yes, the dialogue, you don't have to strain to hear the dialogue over the loud visuals. The quiet moments have their place.
The only thing that had a problem with aesthetics was obviously I didn't even like factor that into my score because I gave it 100, is that some of those sound effects, or I guess you could say, what would you call it? It's not really music, but like the chanting or like the woman like screaming, just felt a little Orientalist, like it just felt like, oh, let's just put in some like foreign sounding woman here to make it seem like it's something strange happening. I find it a little cheesy. That's all. Like I can like expect that from like a movie from the 70s or 80s, but like I feel like nowadays you can think of something better to do.
The novel is very much placed in Arabia, right? Arrakis is the allegory for Arabia, the dune, the mineral, the spice in this movie. The connection is allegory to oil. Right? And the book is very culturally tied to that, Arabian languages and religion and everything. Do you think the movie should have tied into that more? Because as it stands right now, it just loosely references stuff like that. It loosely references like some foreign-sounding music.
Some phrases here and there.
Yeah.
Like, Lisan al-Ghaib, like, oh, is that Arabic?
And the like, Mahdi,
they say that.
Messiah, right?
Yeah, Messiah.
But in the novel, I read that there's so much more that gets dropped. Yeah, for example, the Arrakis's residents, where are they called again?
The Fremen.
The natives, the Fremen. In the novel, it specifically said they're waging jihad against their colonial oppressors.
The imperialists, or the colonists,
Imperialists, yeah. And so the movie had to make a decision like, are we going to use the same jihad word because of the connotations of what's happened in the past like 20 years, right? Islamic terrorism and everything like that. So they kind of did away with that. Yeah. I mean, the movie had to make those choices.
Yeah. It starts off, right, with Zendaya's character, who's Chani.
Yeah. That's Chani.
So she's narrating, right? And she is talking about how the Harkonnens are oppressors. They're leaving now, and she's like, we wonder who the next oppressors will be. So it is still very direct in terms of like, hey, we are the oppressed, and then the outsiders are the oppressors. The outsiders are from an empire called the Imperium, right? Obviously, like, they're imperialists, I guess, is what you can take from that.
Sure.
And you have the different houses within this empire.
The Harkonnens, the
Harkonnens that were the ones already at the planet Arrakis.
Arrakis, yeah.
They were already at Arrakis, and basically the Emperor.
Well, the Galactic Empire, to borrow a phrase from Star Wars. The Galactic Emperor recalls the Harkonnens from Arrakis because he fears they're becoming too strong.
Too wealthy, really.
Too wealthy, right? So he fears for his own like dominance. So he plays this political game where he recalls the Harkonnens and then installs the Atreides, who he's also afraid of, this up and coming family.
Not just because they have a strong army in
that too.
Many facets of whatever their warfares are. Space war, I think he says like land, and then all he really needs, who we're talking about
Mm-hmm.
right now, is Duke Leto. He is played by Oscar Isaac, which we know from Ex Machina and a few other movies. So the Duke Leto, he has a
He has
son
a
with Lady
son,
Jessica, but he's not married to Lady Jessica. She's a concubine. His son, his name is
Paul.
Paul, and Paul is detached. He is a bookworm, you could say. He's having visions, and he's not interested in like this political hierarchy or
And the
this
games that are
livelihood.
being played, right?
Yeah, he's really not interested in any of that at all. What is Duncan's or Idaho Duncan's relationship with him? Or Duncan
Um,
Idaho, sorry.
so he trained Paul in the
Okay.
art of martial arts or whatever,
I see, I see.
until the other dude takes over for him when Duncan Idaho gets sent away.
Yeah, Duncan Idaho is played by Jason Momoa, and the other dude is played by Josh Brolin. His name in the film is Gurney. I'm trying to think of we should get into the narrative. Like I think we've already kind of
Sure,
started, but we should get into what's going on. So like we
sure.
mentioned, the
So,
Harkonnens are being recalled from Arrakis.
and
We've
in
already
their
talked about
place,
Chani, who is one of the Freemen, and she's narrating for us. Paul and his father Leto, part of the Atreides house, they're the ones that are going to take over the spice trade from Arrakis. If you think about it, a lot goes. This is what I really like about this movie. There is still a lot happening, and a lot of events still occur with, in my opinion, good pacing and entertaining value,
mm-hmm.
despite it being still setting the stage, setting the scene.
Mm.
All right, I'm gonna get into also. There is another element. Lady Jessica, like we said, she's a concubine. She is part of the Bene Gesserit, which is, you could say, a religious order in this universe. It's a bunch of nuns, pretty much. It's led by
Yeah,
women,
it's
right?
all female, right?
Yeah. They have a very particular objective. Their objective is to breed specific people to, I guess you could say, to bring the Messiah, to bring, quote unquote, they call it the One. I'm not
Mm-hmm.
sure if that's the same as the Messiah, but I think it is. Like, what is the
Okay.
Messiah to the Fremen is, quote unquote, the One for the Bene Gesserit. It's the same individual.
I think the Bene Gesserit, they have their own designs on how the galactic empire should be like framed. They want someone who can upset the current order.
They
So they
want
have their own
someone that
political
is.
designs, right?
They do, yeah. And they seem to have some control behind the scenes on the
Mm-hmm.
political order of this
Oh yeah, they're
empire.
very much backstabbing, untrustable people.
Yeah.
Um,
And they're,
yeah,
I
because we
mean,
see them betray the Atreides, right?
yep. But why though, right? They betray with the hope that it makes them more powerful. And again, their objective of setting the stage for the arrival of the One, the chosen one.
Mm-hmm.
We also mentioned someone in the preview as well that Paul was having visions. He's having visions of the Fremen, of the planet Arrakis, of Chani in particular, right? He even has a vision where Duncan Idaho is dead, and he conveys, some of these visions to his mother. He conveys it to Duncan Idaho himself, and he's telling them, this is occurring. And based on these visions, Lady Jessica thinks it's a good idea that he sees, the head of the Bene Gesserit, which is Mother Helen Mohiam. I'm not going to try too hard. Just the head of the Bene Gesserit, right? She's the one who's pulling all the strings. This is where we
Mm-hmm.
kind of get some insight into what their goals are and who Paul might be. So Paul passes this test where his hand is in pain.
Ensnared. Yeah,
Yeah,
ensnared in this
ensnared.
trap.
Yeah, ensnared in this
With
trap. Whether it's like the sensation of it burning or what, he's not allowed to move, or else he'll be pricked by a poison needle.
right.
And he passes that test.
Yeah, so the purpose of that test was the head nun disapproved of Jessica having a son. because apparently the Bene Gesserit can control whether they have sons or daughters. According to the Bene Gesserit's designs, she was to have a daughter because a daughter would further breed with some other family's kid, and then to accomplish basically the Bene Gesserit's designs. So the son wasn't desired. So he was seen as somewhat like an aberration, someone disposable. So
So does that mean
yeah.
the one is supposed to be a woman or
It wasn't. No, the one I think is supposed to be male, but he came too early. So
okay? So like
a generation
they
or
don't
two
believe
too
that
early.
yeah. So they don't believe
Right.
that it's him, and that was just a
Right.
wasted opportunity, really.
Right. But the Bene Gesserit, they're still spreading this mythos, this rumor that the Messiah has arrived. They spread this rumor to the residents of Arrakis, the
Yeah,
Fremen.
to the Fremen, in a way to
Right.
kind of control them,
Mm-hmm.
right?
They use religion to control. Yeah.
Yeah.
And so that test was to guarantee that this boy had sufficient control over his power, and he was strong-willed. Otherwise, he would be seen as a danger because he possessed some of the Bene Gesserit's power, and he had a high birthright through his father, the Duke.
Yeah. All right, so let's get into the meat of the story, right? So they do go to Arrakis, House Atreides does,
Yeah.
and we see the Harkonnens. Okay, we should talk about the head of the Harkonnens. This bald, creepy, really tall person, or like he floats or something.
He's
Um,
tall, he's imposing with his fat and folds, and he's always covered with something
yeah,
liquidy. Either he's in a steam room with like gas or something, or he's in a tub of oil. So he's this very slimy, ugly, disgusting figure.
yeah,
Kind of reminiscent of like some Star Wars figures, if you think like Jabba the Hutt or someone like that. But yeah, so those are the Harkonnens. What would you want to say? The Atreides, we meet them as they're arriving in Dune, right? And they discover that their spice operations have been compromised because the Harkonnens have somewhat sabotaged them with weakening their systems, right? We see one of their harvesters, it can't even lift up another vehicle to avoid the sandworm.
yeah, and like just the amount of cylinders that they have, silos that they have to put the spice in is like a tenth of what it was for the
Mhm.
Harkonnens.
And so the Duke feels that he was set up to fail,
Yeah,
and so he realizes the political goal of setting himself up to fail was to weaken both houses, and he realizes that design, and he fears for his son.
oh really? I was thinking
Yeah.
he maybe saw that as a ploy by the Harkonnens to show the Emperor like, hey, look, the Atreides are not
Oh, sure.
built for this, so
Yeah.
give it back to us.
Yeah. Yeah.
Rather than the Emperor trying to
Himself.
weaken both.
Yeah. I think you're right because they don't see the Emperor's betrayal until the end, where
Yeah.
the Emperor's troops land on the ground.
Yeah, so let's talk about that, right? We don't have much time on Arrakis before things start unfolding pretty quickly. Actually,
Mm-hmm.
one, we know that the Harkonnens had a spy that they were trying to kill Paul, right, with that little whatever it was, like that little bug
Mm-hmm.
that they planted in his room. Duke Leto is not having the easiest time doing like the most basic function of why he was sent there, which is to harvest the spice. He's again like Fahad, like you said, he's struggling to even do it because there's the lack of equipment or the equipment quality.
Yeah.
So we also meet in this moment the head of transition, Dr. Kynes,
Yeah. And
right?
so she is of both worlds, right? She's half Fremen and half something else,
Yeah.
and she directly serves the Emperor, I believe.
Yep, she directly serves the emperor, neither house. She there's one moment where that caught my eye where you could tell that Dr. Kynes, not just Dr. Kynes, but like through her, we note the major difference between the two houses. When the you could say, I guess there's soldiers or workers or whatever that are in the spice harvesting machine and that's stuck and that's about to get eaten up by the worm. Duke Leto's like, damn the spice, we're gonna get these guys out, and then like they shift the camera over to Dr. Kynes, who like looks at him like, what the hell, this guy's gonna let the spice go, which we're getting an idea, like, the Harkonnens, and also from other individuals. I think Gurney mentions that to Paul, like, hey, you've never seen the Harkonnens. Like, these are ruthless people. And I think we kind of get that idea too from the few moments we see
Yeah.
from whatever planet that they're on. Like when they're preparing to go siege and take over Arrakis again. Like there's one dude that's like, doing his throat language that they
Bleeding.
have. Yeah, he's like preaching something while the soldiers are getting ready. But then there's like bodies, I guess upside down, crucified, and like there's like blood dripping into the water. Like
Yeah.
it just seems like a very ruthless house.
Oh yeah. Yeah, and so that contrasts. Yeah, you're right. It absolutely contrasts against the treaties, who are seen as more merciful, right?
Not just merciful, but like, because at the end of the day, they're still colonists. They're still there to extract, the spice and the wealth and leave
Yeah.
the Fremen as, not really provide any benefit to them.
Mm-hmm.
Even Duke Leto, despite him being quote unquote more merciful, his goal is to ally with the Fremen so he has a desert army, only to strengthen his own house. It's not so much that he's there to help the Fremen. Now, could you argue that's like a mutual benefit for both? Because then the Fremen will have, the House Atreides defending them if need be. You could say that. But in any case, you could also make the point that his compassion gets the best of him because very soon the Harkonnens come back to the planet and they basically attack, like a full force attack. They have an insider though, right, who betrays House Atreides, which is their personal doctor, Paul's personal doctor.
Mm-hmm.
Dr. Yoon, or not? Is it Yoon or Yu? It's Dr. Yu.
Okay.
So yeah, Dr. Yu, his wife basically is kidnapped by the head of the Harkonnens and being tortured, and that's how they get Dr. Yu to basically betray,
Mm-hmm.
Duke Leto and Paul. He does not kill Paul. He only kills Duke Leto, but he gives him like an out. He's like, hey, like you're gonna be in this state of paralysis pretty much. You're not gonna be able to do anything. But here, I'm gonna put this thing in your mouth that when you bite it, a gas will come out that will kill you and whoever is by you for your last breath. So he's like, use it wisely, and you can, maybe get the head of House
Mm-hmm.
Harkonnen this way. I thought that was pretty cool.
Yeah.
Yeah, man. So there is a lot happening. So the siege happens, right? And it only takes like one night. One night, the Harkonnens take everything right back. Dr. Yu also set up the escape for Paul and Lady Jessica.
He leaves behind like all that survival equipment, right?
Yeah, like the Fremen like
The suit.
bodysuit that you need
Yeah.
to be out in the desert. Yeah, he leaves all that behind. Oh, but the thing is, like, they are captured. Lady Jessica and Paul are captured by the Harkonnens, and they're gonna be dropped out in the desert.
Right.
It's just that Lady Jessica is able to use her voice, that commanding voice, like a demonic voice, to basically force someone to do whatever she says.
Stop! Cut the rope! Give me the knife!
Something that Paul is unable to do, whether it's because, he doesn't have the conviction in him to do something like that, or, I'm
He doesn't
thinking a
have the
little.
training or something.
The
Or
training,
maybe
I'm
because he's
thinking,
a male.
oh, maybe because he's a male, or maybe because, he's not really of that caliber. Like he's a different person. Maybe he's the one, right?
Yeah.
Anyway, they do escape because of Lady Jessica's ability to do that demonic voice. Yeah, and then they have all the survival stuff that they need because of Dr. Yu. Paul is able to read the note and know that it was Dr. Yu that set all this up for him. In any case, Duke Leto does get his chance to talk to Baron Vladimir Harkonnen.
Played by
Stellan Skarsgård.
Skarsgård. Yeah, Skarsgård. He was in
Skarsgård.
that movie, The Girl with the Dragon Tattoo. He's the
Okay.
Yeah. He plays a good villain, I want to say.
He was also in Good Will Hunting as Lambo.
Oh yeah. Yeah. As a semi-villain. No, not really a villain.
Yeah, so Baron Vladimir, he's the head of House Harkonnen. He mentions that Duke Leto is his cousin. Or at least he refers to him as his cousin. Remember, he's like, "Hey, you guys have a great kitchen, cousin." That's what he says to him, right? While he's like munching on food, while Duke Leto is just laying there naked.
No.
Yeah.
What does he say exactly?
Exactly, he says. I couldn't tell you because I don't know verbatim.
I don't think
but
they're
he says,
cousins. I think he's referring to his cousin.
No, he's talking to Duke Leto,
No.
and he's saying,
Okay.
"You guys have a great kitchen, cousin."
You have a wonderful kitchen, cousin.
No, that can't be it. This feud that's been going on between the Harkonnens and Atreides, it's been going on for generations. And
Yeah, why can't cousins be in a feud?
for generations. The feud has been going on for generations. If a cousin is in a feud with another cousin, they've descended from a pretty immediate ancestor, right? A grandfather. So that's why they can't be cousins. They're from different worlds. They're different, like almost species. Yeah. Yeah.
Maybe, man. I don't know. I was thinking that, hey, maybe that's actually his, not like first cousin or something, but like family. Like, because this is an empire, man. They're all interbreeding anyway. It still starts at the top, right? What about the Queen of England and her family, bro? You know, they're all like...
Oh, yeah. So the Bene Gesserit's designs on like breeding people from different families, it reminded me of what happened in like medieval Europe with all the kings descended from the Habsburg Empire, right? It was ensured that a person from that family ruled or was married to the royals of every single
in some
country
way, there's a relation.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But the two families seem very distinct. Like their powers, like what the Harkonnens can float, and they have some
at this point, they're
mysterious
completely
power.
different.
Yeah.
All right, yeah. So, like we said, Paul is able to escape. We should talk a little bit more about him, right? Now he's finding himself in a new position, right? Where, the ring.
Let's talk about his reluctancy, right?
Yeah,
so
ahead.
he doesn't seem to be a person who wants to be a part of any of these political designs. He doesn't necessarily want to be a ruler with like feet like going after power, like being a power hungry person. And that plays into the visions, right? The visions show him having to fend for himself in a way, and he doesn't want to embrace that future for himself.
Yeah.
Because it shows him allying with the Fremen and like creating his own dynasty or whatever. And that's not what he wants, right?
The visions aren't even trustworthy, are they?
No.
Because he seems to like have a vision of what's gonna occur next, and sometimes he's right.
Yeah. And sometimes he's wrong. Yeah.
And sometimes it's not what he saw.
I think he is like successfully resisting parts of his visions because he doesn't want that future for himself.
Yeah.
So it presents this interesting story where like certain big parts of his prophecy or his visions are going to occur regardless of what he does. The little stuff maybe he has some control over.
So this is the part of the film where I wanted a lot more. And I'm sure the book gives a lot more. A lot more structure to this vision stuff. A lot more context to it as well. And probably plays a major role in the character development of Paul. In the books, at least, I'm sure. Again, I don't know. But in the movie, that's what I was like longing for. Because it seemed a little out of place at times. And it just seemed like, they kind of probably have to do this because it will play a larger role in the next movie, which we haven't seen yet, which isn't coming out for a few years. So it's something like that's where it was, I guess, getting a little annoying to me where, hey, we don't know exactly what we're seeing here, and we're not going to know today. So there is no delivery of that promise.
We should both read the book. So
we should. Maybe I will, man. Maybe I'll give it a chance. I'm not. I do read, but man, this world fantasy is not the kind of stuff I like to read.
I used to be a big reader in fantasy and sci-fi, but that was in my early years. I haven't read fiction in so long.
That's true. I also read a lot more nonfiction now than I do fiction. When I do read fiction, it's short novels and like short essays.
Yeah,
straight up. Like it's nothing like fancy anymore. So we were on the part of Paul having visions, and Paul and Lady Jessica are on their own. Paul has like some distinct qualities that clearly set him apart. One, he's very well educated in the Fremen way of life, and even like the way he puts on that suit, right? Where Dr. Kynes is like shocked to see that he knew exactly how to put it on the proper way. Because you know how she does like a double check of like Gurney and like Duke Leto, and she sees his and she's like, who taught you to do this? He's like, it just seemed like the proper way to do it.
Yeah, he has the Fremen instinct, right?
Yeah.
I think it was referring to the pants being tucked in, because that way the water would be trapped within the suit, because the suit recycles the water somehow.
Wasn't there like a Fremen who Javier Bardem's character, who's Stilgar, he's one of the leaders of the Fremen. You could say he's one of the commanders or something. He comes to visit Duke Leto early on when the Atreides first arrive to Arrakis, and as he walks away from Paul, he says like, I've seen you before, and he walks away. Again, I assume maybe in the visions. Maybe the Fremen have a way of communicating through those visions or something. Like that's what I started thinking about. Again, I want to talk about this stuff because I haven't read the book, but for people listening, maybe you haven't read the book either, and this is the movie itself is all you've seen. So I assume you're probably asking yourselves the same questions. This is the stuff that I really liked because I can't wait to watch the next movie to find out, or maybe just read the book and spoil it for myself. But yeah, I think maybe that's a way Fremen communicate. So that's why Stilgar says, I've seen you before. When Lady Jessica and Paul are out in the desert, his Fremen, quote unquote, instincts are kicking in, right? He knows not just instincts, but he's also learned, right? He's educated himself in how they walk, how to conserve water and energy, how to stay cool, what to walk towards, what to avoid, how to avoid the sandworms, things like that. And he knows like where the Fremen would be at if he needs to find them, which is exactly what they do. He goes towards where he can find the Fremen. He knows what time of day he needs to get there so he doesn't startle them, because he knows that they'll move when the night comes or something. All that is just playing into the entire idea that Paul is something different, something special. Is he the Messiah?
The Mahdi?
The Mahdi? Is he Lisan al-Ghaib? Is he the one? Maybe, maybe not, right? That's what they're setting this film up. And that's really, one of my friends said it well, actually. He's like, the movie kind of ends in a way where obviously you're not sure, but you kind of are sure that he is, what he envisions. Like a leader of the Fremen, in a way. He's going to lead them. He's going to make sure that, because they are the oppressed, right? He has to be the hero then. He's going to lead the oppressed to victory. That's how I ended the film thinking. But he's like, imagine if Harry Potter ended after like, you're a wizard, Harry. And then it just ends. That's kind of like where this movie ends, right? Like, you are something, like whether he is a Mahdi or not, or whatever, the Messiah, he's clearly something that the Fremen are gonna, need to be victorious. Yeah. And that's kind of where it ends. How it ends with him being challenged by one of the Fremen, and he's able to successfully, using Chinese blade that he kept envisioning, and in that vision he kept seeing himself, or the Chinese hand covered in blood, what I assume to be his blood, like he would be dead from that blade. But the vision is not what we see play out. He actually uses that blade to kill the dude that challenges him, who was one of the Fremen. So he basically is accepted, right? He's accepted at that point to be part of one of the Fremen, and they go off into the distance to, I guess, live life. And, we know the Harkonnens are back at the planet Arrakis, and they're gonna be harvesting that spice and treating the Fremen like crap. And
the Fremen are gonna resist, right?
Yeah, and the Fremen are gonna resist, and we can assume that now not only does Paul have these natural instincts, he could be this special individual. He also has, he has to avenge his father at this point too, right? So he has a pretty big incentive to ally with the Fremen and, resist the Harkonnens' rule.
By his mere existence, I think there's power in him there. Do you remember that scene where Paul's talking to the doctor about the doctor testifying to the other houses, how the emperor betrayed the Atreides, and Paul says, this evidence can get all the houses united against the emperor, and that would create a big conflict for the empire, right? Because you would have the houses rejecting the rule of the emperor. I think that's the most valuable weapon Paul has, and he can testify that if he ever steps foot on their planet, or he can get out some message
To
it'll be
basically
interesting.
turn the entire empire against the emperor and remove that central force and create some instability, pretty much.
Yeah.
Because that's what it would do, right? Because then there would
Yeah.
be like a power vacuum.
Yeah, the houses would no longer trust the empire and the emperor. Do you remember the early scene where the House Atreides, they accept the emperor's wishes? They're like, House Atreides has never rejected a call from the emperor, and it never shall. And then they go off to harvest the spice on Arrakis.
Yep.
So that blind obedience to the emperor, that'll disappear, and that'll threaten the rule of the emperor. And I think that potential carries the most threat to the empire.
You mentioned some of the writing. I give the writing a pretty high score because I thought it was actually very well done. The writing had enough exposition, right? But not too much. It was natural dialogue that felt comfortable, well delivered. And also, like I said, it was some exposition, but at the same time, like you could tell it was a little artsy. Like it was a little abstract here and there, but like with just enough details to get you to not leave you confused, pretty much. So I thought the writing was actually great in this movie. It wasn't cryptic and it was straightforward, but it was still like enjoyable.
It essentially served the purposes of the plot, right? I wish it did a little bit more than that.
Not in a boring, like direct way.
No. They found good ways to fit it in. What I wish is, I guess I'm not. I haven't read the book, but to inject some sort of poetry in there to have more like.
Well, I was gonna say I think they probably
tangential
did.
dialogue rather than just serve the interest of the plot.
I was gonna say I think that's kind of what they did. I thought it was a little poetic. I thought, and it was still enough exposition to get me through. I assume some of those lines were directly from the book. I mean, it was just pretty well written. Like it was not something you would say out loud, like to another person or to yourself. All right, let's go to Frank Herbert, the actual writer of this story, this universe. I mean, I just want to get an idea of like, why did he
choose the Arab influence?
Not just the Arab influence, but like, why is that the backdrop for his entire like novel?
I guess because the allegory, right?
Yeah, but like, isn't there plenty of examples of imperialism? I guess it was just timely at the time. But like, I'm thinking because like the oil stuff, I mean, yes, it's been exploited in a way, but the oil stuff has been still mainly harvested by like their own country. Like it's still Saudi Arabia with Saudi Arabia. It's still Libya with Libya. It's still Iran with Iran. There's been attempts, I would say.
At one point, there were multinational companies that were brought in
mainly to like, get it started, to build the infrastructure, things like that.
But no longer, right? It's mostly state operated.
It's state operated, but like with some, big, you could say,
international investors.
Well, like Iran, I think, is a great example. Iran's a oil-rich country, right? The West was relying on that oil for some time, except for the fact that the people in Iran were seeing very little benefit from these oil riches. So what Iran did, right? Because they weren't seeing the riches, they elected a democratic leader that was going to cut off, this outside influence and, bring it in-house, bring the production in-house where the money would flow through the Iran economy. When they did that, that's when America was like, whoa, you can't just do that. That's when they overthrew that democratically elected leader and installed a Shah, because the Shah would go back to the status quo of basically, sending all the wealth outside of the country. And we know how that ended up, because that only created a stronger resistance and revolution, which ended up with the Ayatollah and the Islamic Revolution in Iran in 79. So, and even to this day, right, their oil is blacklisted by the United States. I mean, obviously they trade with countries, but they're not allowed to trade with you could say large partners of the United States. So like if you're in the EU, you're not getting it. If you're obviously in America, you're not getting Iran oil. They're basically blockading it, basically saying, hey, if we can't control it, no one can have it. Very imperialistic of the United States. But I mean, I get where Frank Herbert was getting these influences from. That's pretty much the setting of the spices, right? And I figured he used spices because what was one of the biggest empires of the last, few hundred years is the British Empire.
Mhm.
What did they do in India? It was mainly for spices. It was for
Yeah.
the spice trade and for tea. Like, they wanted China, like Hong Kong and the Indian subcontinent. So between like, he just kind of updated it, made it more relevant to his time, which was oil instead of spice. But with
Mhm.
the backdrop of like kind of how the British treated the spice trade.
Yeah, and this is set way in the future, but yet
Way in the future.
the novels still retain a lot of the
I think
Arabic
it says,
influences
here's the
and language
thing.
and stuff. Yeah.
Here's the thing. I think that I read this in one of the reviews I was reading, that it says like the year 10,000, but that's the year 10,000 after a specific event,
Okay.
not like the year 10,000 after, like Christ or something.
Okay.
It's not like the Gregorian calendar year 10,000. It's like its own calendar. So I think it was something more like 20 or 30,000 years from like now.
Mm-hmm.
Like in the future. It still retains those Arabic influences. I'm not sure how I feel about it. I guess I got to read the book to like have a good understanding of like why he would choose it. Because to me, it just feels like he found something that would be foreign for his audience.
Yeah.
And he just did it. Instead of just creating something himself, he's like, hey, we'll just use these terms that they use out there, or because it just sounds foreign, which I don't know how I feel about that,
Yeah, but we have to read the book to be a critic of.
Yeah, I'm not criticizing it in itself. Like, I don't...
Because we don't know exactly the scope and the usage of it and how,
Yeah, like if it's just like, like a shameless stereotypical way of like...
Injecting some Orientalism, right?
Yeah, exactly, into his novel. Or is it like actually well thought out?
I think it is well thought out, but we have to read the book to be sure.
Yeah, I think that's what we're getting from this episode, is that if you really want to understand the movie, you have to kind of read the book, or else because the movie is just incomplete, or you just wait for them to make all the movies and look at that as a total set, right?
Yeah, I mean, watching the book before you read the book, that's fine. I mean, that's what I'm doing. I'm pretty much intending to read the book at this point because I don't want to wait that long for part 2 to know how the story goes.
Understandable.
And it often helps with when you're reading, because now you have the visual language to envision everything you're reading. And I like doing that. I did that for Lord of the Rings. I watched like one part, then read the books, then finished it up. Yeah, it's an interesting way to do it, but works for me.
Yeah, at the end of the day, man, I can tell like it's still a very simple... Like, it might be like a complex world and all, but I think it's gonna be a pretty simple story, right? It's just
it's a classic hero's journey, right?
Yeah, a hero's journey.
And it's not going to
Maybe
deviate
you could say,
too
quote
far.
unquote, a savior. I mean, a savior, a messiah, right? Like he's gonna come and save the Fremen from oppression.
I think that's how. I don't want to spoil anything for you, but I think you should take a more cynical look at that. How the Bene Gesserit are installing the religion, a mythos, to take advantage of the situation because they have their own political designs.
And what is their political design? Control?
I'm not sure. Control must be at the top of it.
Yeah. Which they seem to have a good amount of already.
They do. Because no one seems to dare cross them, right?
Yeah, because even with the
Harkonnens, right?
Even with the Harkonnens, she lays out a contingency like, "Hey, you can't kill Lady Jessica," and they abide by it. They don't do that, or the boy. Yeah. I guess I'm dismissing how there are going to be a lot of other factors. It's not just like the Fremen, and I'm sure there's other houses that we're going to meet in this universe. I'm sure there's obviously the Emperor himself, and like the political designs around the Empire, and then there's the Bene Gesserit and their motives.
Should we? Do you want to speculate and have some fun with how you think this movie is going to end?
Like movie or the series?
This series.
I can tell you what's going to happen.
Yeah.
My guess is he's going to be a martyr of sorts, Paul will. So he will be the savior.
But he's
He
going to fall
will lead
short
them
of
to-
seeing. He'll fall
He's
short.
gonna fall short of seeing the success himself, but he will lead them to victory. The Fremen, at least.
Yeah.
However, if I'm reading the Mahdi or Messiah stuff, like, because every soul will die once is like what we believe, right? So if he is, the Mahdi or the Messiah, he's gonna have to die, and that would have to be a dramatic moment in the film. Like, I don't know, man. Like, how much further should I speculate? Should I speculate about the Bene Gesserit as well? Like, what their role will be? Right now, it's set up kind of like a war between houses and a war for spices and control. I think like you kind of alluded to, the actual battle is going to be between the control of the Bene Gesserit and Paul and like the Fremen. Like, the spice trade is like fueling, or you could say funding, the Bene Gesserit in a way, and their power, but it's not really the end goal. It's not just to keep making money, right? Like, the Bene Gesserit have a bigger vision, and based on their demonic voice as well, I assume they are quote unquote the Antichrist or whatever, and they're going to be on the other end of that battle between.
Even though they brought the Messiah through their careful breeding program.
Yeah, true. I don't know. Well, that could happen. They effed up. They tried to play games and they got played.
What do you make of their name? Because it's very interesting. Bene Gesserit.
Bene Gesserit?
Yeah. The Jesuit part, I think it's supposed to invoke what do you think of when you think of Jesuit? So the
Jesuit, yeah.
The Christian order.
Yeah.
Even though in the book they're supposed to be a Muslim order.
I don't know if Bene is also like a Hebrew or other in Arabic, right? Like,
we've heard of Bene Israel, right?
Beni means like children of Israel.
Children, right?
Or like we refer to like humans as Beni Adam, like children of Adam.
Oh, okay.
Children, if it means the same thing, I don't know if it does. Bene Gesserit, what is Gesserit?
Jesus.
Jesus. Yeah. We're like totally not qualified to talk about religion.
Nope, because
or the book. Read this book. We're just making shit up right now. And pulling together like loose strings.
Yeah.
Well, what do you think? What do you think is going to happen with Paul, the Bene Gesserit, with Arrakis?
I don't believe in any of the visions. I think we're going to find that Paul, because he sees them, they're very personal to him. It's going to be somewhat of a self-fulfilling prophecy where he's going to ally with the Fremen and take control of the planet, not because of any fate or anything, but by his own design he'll do that, and he'll find himself becoming the oppressor of the Fremen eventually.
Oh.
Yeah. Nothing changes for this planet and these people.
Classic case of oppressed becomes the oppressor kind of thing.
Yeah.
He's not really the oppressed.
No.
But you're just saying like he's gonna find himself in a position where he's gonna become an oppressor.
Yeah.
Interesting.
And I see the Bene Gesserit as being a very manipulative organization who instills
for sure.
the belief.
But like, are you saying that they're the ones that are gonna have some control on him? Because he seems very already from this first movie, like very anti Bene Gesserit. He does not seem to like them at all. He can tell what their games are.
Yeah, but they still have the power of the voice that can compel people to act, right?
I guess, yeah.
Maybe out of loyalty to his mother or his house, he'll betray the Fremen.
I think you're totally wrong.
Okay.
Because then they would have to introduce too much new stuff to make the story work. I mean, then is it going to be a battle between Chani and Paul?
It could very well be. Yeah. Some betrayal going on. Because his visions kind of hint at that, don't they? In one scene,
hint at that for sure. That
Chani
she has
stabbed him.
Yeah, has stabbed him and has the blood all over her hands.
Yeah.
With that same like knife that's made from the tooth of a sandworm. Yeah. One other thing, I think Beast Rabin Harkonnen, played by Batista.
Yeah. He
is going to switch sides.
Huh? What?
He's gonna switch sides. He's gonna betray House Harkonnen.
Oh, is he? You just read that?
No, I didn't just read that. I'm just saying that because of the couple interactions he has with his
with his uncle.
Oh yeah, that's his uncle, right? Vladimir.
Yeah.
I don't know. It just seemed like he doesn't actually approve of his uncle's like
Really.
method.
Hmm.
Yeah.
Okay.
I don't know.
I
And
could see that in a quest for his own power.
No, I'm gonna say he's gonna
He's
be
gonna
like
kinda-
somewhat of a martyr figure.
Oh. All right.
No, he probably maybe I don't know.
I,
Maybe
I
he
would,
doesn't succeed
I would
though.
love seeing that a character arc where he kind of teams up with Paul.
Well, here let me correct my speculation.
Yeah.
I don't think he's gonna succeed in
okay.
betraying Vladimir,
Okay.
except that he will attempt to and fail.
All right.
Yeah, that's at least we're
That's some-
recording
that's
this,
some-
man.
that's some
So we're
bold
gonna come back 3
speculation.
years from now.
Yeah.
Well, I guess we'll read it, right, and then we'll find out. Zendaya's character Chani, she's gonna have control on him, man, on Paul. It's gonna be your classic love stuff, man. Like he's gonna fall for her, and she's gonna have some sway over him.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know what's gonna happen with Lady Jessica. I think she's still pretty central to the story.
You're
because
talking
of
about
the Bene
Paul's mother,
Gesserit.
right? Yeah.
Yeah.
So she's pregnant with a child,
Oh yeah, and she's pregnant.
and
Crap.
in her vision,
does that
that
mean?
child looks to be with the blue eyes, but that's just
Yeah,
the
a
effects
Fremen.
of being born on the planet. The spice interferes with your pigment in your eye or something. But I wonder what that child's role will be in Paul's journey.
Or if that child is the one, and Paul is simply
Yeah.
not.
He's the predecessor to the Messiah or something.
Yeah. I mean, there's some good stuff there. I mean, I don't know. Like I said, I feel like there's a lot that this movie did to set up a pretty compelling story. And they did a good job, I thought. Like, I really was not bored for the 2.5 hours I watched this movie.
No. I did hear some complaints from some friends, friends of friends.
What
they were
was the
talking about
complaints?
how they felt the movie dragged. And I could honestly see that if you didn't get into it, like if you didn't
I thought
embrace
the
the
pacing was
fan.
great.
What's that? You thought the
I
pacing
thought
was
the
great?
pacing was great. Yeah.
I guess if you
think about how
missed-
quickly things happen.
If you missed how it was going to be very quickly laying out stuff, like all the political details, I think
Mhm.
you could get lost. And then at that point, you're playing a game of catch up, and it just feels like you're one step behind.
Yeah, but to be fair, I feel like that's a lot of good movies.
Yeah.
It's easy to miss like an important moment of dialogue or an important scene.
Mm-hmm.
Even with it being as long as it was, there were a couple moments, right, where I think Paul is like this outside walking around on his home planet looking out at the water. They felt a little dragged, but it was there for the visual impact, for the setting.
Mm-hmm.
I'm trying to think, other than that though, like I felt like the story really moved quickly.
Yeah, I thought so too.
Like I'm just thinking back at it, like how quickly we go from finding out who Paul is, his house, the family, to them eventually being on planet Arrakis, and then to them being betrayed, and to him being part of the Fremen. Like
It happened.
that's a lot of stuff.
I know.
Like,
Yeah.
and in between all that, you have the backdrop of
And you
the
still
Bene
have to
Gesserit.
give the sense in the movie of time elapsing. You can't have these things happen in quick succession, right?
Did they do a good job of that though? I don't know if they did. It almost felt like they were only there for one night. Is that the case?
No, hell no. I think they had like a few, almost years to try to extract spice.
What? No
Yeah,
way.
if
I
you-
didn't-
I think, yeah.
Dude, but then I'm telling you that the movie failed at conveying that sense of time
Sure.
passing, because it legit felt like maybe I'm exaggerating when I say a day, but like
Yeah.
a week.
Yeah, it definitely wouldn't have been a week because they
Why not?
arrived at the planet and they were supposed to get the mining operations and they had quotas to meet and stuff like that.
Yes.
How
we
can
ever
you
see
how
them?
can you ever set quotas up on like a weekly basis? You're talking about shipping spice off planet. I don't know.
Oh, so we should talk about what
Yeah.
the spice does, right?
Oh yeah, it's used as a interstellar travel fuel, and to the Fremen,
No, it's not fuel, actually.
it's fuel, is it not?
No.
It
So I looked
enables
up.
it. It enables the travel.
It is used to feed a creature
Uh-huh.
that is like not superhuman, but like I guess superhuman in terms of brain power,
Yeah.
that controls the mechanics of the interstellar travel.
Oh, okay.
I don't know. There's like a layer to it.
Sure.
You gotta read the books, man.
But I guess I can just think of it as fuel because the movie completely.
Essentially, that's what it is.
Yeah.
I mean, And then if you're using oil as like the metaphor for it, right? That's
Yeah.
essentially what it is.
Yeah. But to the Fremen, it's not fuel. It's spice, and it's used for
Oh, it's an herbal,
ceremonies
like,
and
remedy.
medicinal purposes.
Yeah, it's like a herbal thing where they like a drug of sorts where
Yeah.
I don't know if it's like a psychedelic or if it's like a
Cocaine,
hallucinogen or
stimulant.
a stimulant, yeah, or if it's just something like ritual based for them.
Yeah.
I don't know. Honestly, the story is pretty simple for this one movie.
It is.
The world is complicated for sure, but the story is simple. And there is obviously so much you can get into, but I think honestly, we should just tell all of our listeners, myself included, that we just need to read the book. If we really are serious about enjoying the film and this world, probably just need to read the book.
Agreed.
Talking about the visions, right?
Yeah.
Jamie's,
Jamie?
one of the other Fremen, Jamie's.
Who's Jamie?
He's the one who challenges
that guy.
Paul's mother.
Okay.
But, he says we can't fight women, so Paul fights for his mom.
Right.
Remember when Paul and his mom are escaping from the troopers, the Emperor's troops, the soldiers, in the sandstorm with that, dragonfly helicopter that they got.
Yeah.
He envisions Jamie's telling him, just go with the flow. Like, in his visions, Jamie's is helping him.
Yeah.
Right? But in reality, Jamie's hates his guts and doesn't want him to be around.
I'd qualify that. He doesn't hate his guts. It's more like he views those two people,
as part of the
Paul
outsiders
and his mother, as resources because they value water so much. They literally want to extract their blood so they can, use it as water.
You gotta hate someone quite a bit, man, to just only see them as resources.
Even when they die, I think the way they're wrapping his body and taking care of it, I think they're gonna.
So make sure that they get the water from it or whatever liquid to.
Yeah, they leave no resources unused.
Yeah, and
because
the Fremen,
it's
we
such
kind of
a
didn't talk about
hostile
this
environment.
But like the Fremen are, they're not like a super species or anything, but they're very well adapted to this planet Arrakis, which is, purely desert. I assume the temperatures they give you is in Celsius, so like 100 to 140 degrees Celsius, not Fahrenheit, because Fahrenheit, man, that's not that bad. Celsius, that's probably pretty bad. I mean, 100 Celsius is boiling, right?
Yeah.
I don't remember my
There's
chemistry.
nothing that would survive. Not a water-based life, at least. Maybe they have their own scale of temperatures.
Oh, maybe they do, but they do mention degrees, and I just assume it's in Celsius.
Okay. All right.
And no, because everything else is in metric too. I think they talk about like time.
Not freedom units. No? Time?
Not the empirical for the Imperium.
Oh yeah. How did they mention time? I don't remember.
I don't remember if it was time or distance. I think it may have been distance that they mentioned, like in meters or something.
Oh, all right.
Like mentioning size or something like that. I thought that was pretty interesting that Jamie's is in his visions.
Oh, he's an ally, but in real life,
he's an ally for him and able to like help him get through something that he didn't know what to like. That ship is about to go down, that helicopter or whatever, but it's when he turns it off and lets like the sandstorm just like do its thing. Yeah. That they're able to make it out of the sandstorm. I'm probably gonna read the book, at least the first book. Yeah. The fact that I know that this movie didn't even cover that, probably read the first book just to.
But when to do it? I mean, I think reading it now will be too early. You'll just be wanting part 2 of
that's
the movie.
what I was gonna check.
I'll do it midway between the two movies.
Midway between the two movies.
Yeah.
I'm looking at the Dune franchise, everyone. So books written by Frank Herbert himself. So the first book actually came out in 1965. And the second one came out in 1969, Dune Messiah. All right. So I think that's the one that's probably about Paul as a Messiah. And he's going to die. Then is 1976. So he takes a solid 7 years for the next one, which is called Children of Dune. And then you have God Emperor of Dune. This is probably where you're saying Paul becomes the Emperor. God Emperor? Come on. He's both the Messiah and the Emperor. And then that was in 81. And then 84 is the Heretics of Dune, is the uprising against the God Emperor, right? The Heretics. I'm extrapolating quite a bit just from the title. And the last book that Frank Herbert himself wrote was Chapter House, Dune in 1985. Man, these are like big books. We're talking 464 pages, 480 pages, 412 pages. Oh, Dune Messiah is pretty short, 256. Children of Dune, 444.
So I'm seeing the third book, Children of Dune. It was adapted
Yeah.
into a miniseries in 2003, and it has James McAvoy.
Really?
Yeah,
What was it on?
I think
Like
HBO
on,
or something.
Yeah, so that's another thing. I think adaptations of this book have been, or of this series have been done many times before.
Yeah.
Not many times, but enough times that people are not a fan of the
Adaptation.
adaptations.
Right.
Yeah. Like everyone always says, oh, you just got to read the book. I mean, dude, after Frank Herbert, his son Brian Herbert and Kevin J. Anderson co-authored 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15, 16,
Wow.
16 books, 17, 18, 19 books, man. So this is an insanely long series.
But for these two movies that are coming out, just read the first book.
Yeah, for these first two movies, probably the first book is...
It'll cover.
actually, Dune Messiah is probably worth reading. I feel like those two like were one...
Yeah.
I feel like he already had Dune Messiah in his head if it only came out 4 years after the first book, you know?
Oh, okay.
Whereas like
Good point.
Children of Dune came out 7 years later. Maybe he started thinking about that a little later. Whereas like,
Yeah.
I think Dune Messiah, based on the size of it too, only 200 like some pages,
Uh-huh.
I think you probably should read both. Because it could very well be that the next movie gets into that second book.
Yeah.
If anything, it probably will. All right, everyone.
Thanks for
That was a
listening to
lot.
us. Yeah, that was a lot.
Yeah, thanks for listening to the episode. I mean, again, it feels like a lot, but it really isn't. Because you can keep just digging into stuff, but we're concluding that you should just read the book. What's the point of digging into this stuff without reading the book?
And if it were my choice, I'd watch the first movie, read the book, watch the second movie
Yeah, if you haven't read the book yet, watch the first movie.
to
I
even
don't
decide
think-
whether or not you want to invest that much time into
Yeah, perhaps.
that, yeah.
Because I don't think it's...
fantasy world building. Yeah.
Yeah.
To,
You definitely don't need to have read the first book to like enjoy this movie. I thought it was a good movie, right? I thought, and I'm not even into fantasy. Maybe I'm just like a Denis Villeneuve fanboy, and I'm being overly nice. That's all I'm gonna say. Like I liked the escape of it.
and like all the moments where Denis handles like the suspenseful moments, I think that's executed extremely well. Just like
Yeah,
all of his
it is.
former movies. Yeah.
Yep. All right, everyone. We'll leave it at that. Thanks for listening. What we do next, we don't know, but we'll let you know. Just follow us at the Twice Over. Peace.
Peace.
Thanks for listening to this production of The Twice Over. If you enjoyed this episode, consider subscribing and sharing it with a friend. Want to see what your tally is? Check out thetwiceover.com. All the movies we've done are listed there, as well as what we're watching for the current week. Follow us at The Twice Over on Twitter, Instagram, and Facebook, where you can leave us any suggestions, feedback, or comments. And if you're about it, you can also support us on Patreon. The music you hear on this podcast is from Amerigo Gazaway. You can find his work on Bandcamp and Spotify.